Let's talk about power. The uncertainty is in the air in the power sector as government is yet to reach an agreement with independent power producers over restructuring debts to the tune of some $1.4 billion. Government says that it is working around the clock to get independent power producers to agree its offer. And of course, undertaking energy sector reforms is a crucial part of the $3 billion support program government secured from the International Monetary Fund. Measures to be implemented include some regular adjustment of the tariffs as well. Minister for State and the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, says these are crucial measures necessary to ensure stability within the power sector.
I mean, the power sector, as I indicated earlier, is our Achilles heels. It's a very important sector for our economy. Without power, there's no economy. Okay, and so some have described electricity as the fuel for the engine of the economy. It's the fuel for the engine. You have the engine, but the fuel, without fuel, the engine cannot run. And so the power sector is so critical that we must ensure that power is available, and not just available, but power supply is reliable, so that industry can function. But the finances in the power sector continues to be a challenge for us. We have a shortfall of about $1.4 billion now in the sector, which means that a number of measures have to be taken to reduce the shortfall. And this is why the government brought in the Energy Sector Recovery Program, which has led to the implementation of a number of measures, as a result of which the shortfall, which before was about $4 billion, has reduced to the $1.4 billion that we have. We have done this whilst keeping the lights on. You know, that is very significant. Whilst keeping the lights on, we have reduced the shortfall.
Nowadays,
you know, but
some pockets of them.
Yeah, but those are isolated issues.
They are not issues about financing.
No, I mean, no, until you get to that uninterruptible stage, which as a country we haven't gotten to, you will still have those isolated operational issues. But largely, we have kept the lights on. We never going back to the doom so that we experienced in the past. But having said this, we need to still be very serious about organizing the finances very well to ensure that the energy sector is financially viable. And that means that cost recovery tariffs is important. We must achieve cost recovery tariffs. It doesn't make sense to generate power at 10 cents and then you sell it at 8 cents. Who finances the 2 cents? You know, and so ECG also has to be looked at. I mean, fortunately, we have an MD who is a very serious MD. He was demonstrated that he's up to the task, who has embarked on operations to collect their debts, and they've collected, I understand, about 3.1 billion Ghana cedis. We want to support them to continue to put fire in their operation so that they can recover, because at the end of it all, tariffs are adjusted and yet they are not able to collect, what means that we are being counterproductive. And so we want to be able to do this. Now, you know that there is the cash waterfall mechanism, which has also helped in ensuring that you have cash flow. There were times some IPPs were not paid over a long period of time. There were times ECG could decide which IPP to pay and which one not to pay. You know, so we brought in the cash waterfall mechanism, which has solved that problem, because they all now have some cash flow in a time the cash waterfall is to disburse. And so all those partners along the value chain, they get what is due them. The fuel suppliers are getting what is due them. The IPPs who are generating power are also getting, although they don't get the entire money due them. They continue to have what will enable them operate their plants and to stay in business. Now the minister has engaged the IPPs and put an offer to them for the restructuring of their debts in line with the general debt restructuring that we are doing. And a number of them have positively responded to our offer. Some have asked for some modification in their power purchase agreements, and so ECG is engaging them on the restructuring of the power purchase agreements, and we should ensure that at the end of this negotiation the debt levels are reduced, so that we can keep current on our invoices. I must also state that the energy sector is a component of the IMF program, but also of the World Bank DPOs. We are not required to accumulate new tariffs in the sector or in other MGA. We are not required. And so to be able to fulfill this condition, it means that we must be able to reduce our debt size in the energy sector. We also must ensure that the restructured debts are paid, but we also must keep current on future invoices that are coming. These are the measures that we have to put in place to ensure that the energy sector is not financially overburdened. It becomes financially viable so that we can continue to keep the lights on, and then also to ensure that the supply of electricity is reliable.
And the minister is also hopeful that government will reach a deal with the independent power producers to agree to a debt in excess of $1 billion. You may recall that independent power producers had served notice of shutting down plants if government fails to honor its obligations. Elikplim Kobla Apetokbo is head of the Independent Power Producers Chamber.
Have some of our members who have already defaulted on their debt servicing. Others are also defaulting by the next month. And if action is not taken, we'll run into some difficulties. You know, our sources of funds are from the equity markets and the private markets, for which we cannot give any excuse for not able to make repayment when due. Otherwise, when we are constrained, we don't have an option than to pull out the plugs.
All of these will hinge on revenue mobilization, and the Electricity Company of Ghana says they've been working hard on that. Managing Director Samuel Dubik Mahama has been speaking exclusively to my colleague Kojo Yankson.
I remember the first revenue mobilization exercise ECG did not so long ago. Well, a new one is about to start, but there's something different about it. So we sat for a couple of moments with the MD of ECG, Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama, to find out what that one thing is.
So, Joe, today is the 29th of May. Actually, revenue mobilization is going on. You can tell from how quiet the whole place is. Everybody is out, and we are mobilizing for our monies that are out there. Through the first exercise, we established what was missing, especially in terms of the individuals who were not paying. We have actually built up a number of bills, and we've seen what is out there. And currently, as we speak, private homes, the bill out there that we've built is about 2.1 billion that we are going to try to recoup. So what we are trying to do on this exercise is also to introduce the flat rate program. So for all those who've applied for meters, who have not gotten their meters yet, who have enjoyed power, we are going to try and put all of them on a flat rate. I know we've had conversations about why are we not prosecuting. To the conversations, I saw something that kept on coming down the line, which pointed out to us that, you know, we are partly to be blamed for the predicament. And in so doing, it's going to be very difficult to send someone to prosecute them for power theft. So I wanted us to consider this period as an amnesty period. Anybody consuming power without a meter, make sure the ECG teams out there register you and put you on a flat rate. The flat rate, under the PRC law, we cannot recover beyond a year of what you've consumed. But in truth, we don't know how much you've been consuming, so we want to give you a flat rate and prorate it 6 months as a form of also a nice, fair gesture to you. So we have done our calculations per kilowatt hour, and we'll be rolling out. During this week, during the revenue mobilization exercise, some people would be put on the flat rate, and then we'll see how it rolls out. But there's going to be a bigger one, which will come out with the flagship program and how it's going to be, where we roll out there. Anybody with a faulty meter, even though the meter manufacturers are trying to close the gap, we still cannot let you consume at zero. The zero is a major loss to the company and a major loss to the country as a whole. So we want to bridge that gap by putting you on a flat rate. The teams will be able to register you with your phone number, your account details will be given to you, your Ghana card, or any reputable ID that you have. Then from there, your text messages will start coming to you. You'll be reminded constantly of how you should pay for your what do you call it, your power, and then make sure that we are on point at every given point in time by sending out people to speak to you, or also using the digital space to remind you to pay for your power. The truth of the matter is, we know the fight that is going on. The conversation is about how soon we can get people to understand that at the end of every month, or at the beginning of every month, you should pay for the power you have consumed or the power you're about to consume. Because we feel it's not fair to the average Ghanaian who's on a prepaid meter, who has to pay before he consumes. Yet there are other people that are paying that are not consuming. So that's the new style. But this week, during the revenue mobilization exercise, there will be some people that will be captured and put on a flat rate. We are
using the app to do that?
So we have not the main app, but we have a staff portal that we've granted access to every staff to capture people to that effect. So they'll capture you, they'll take you through your paces, and then put you on the rate that you're supposed to be. It's calculated solely based on kilowatt hours. Right. And then you start paying that until your meter finally gets to you. Some people are going to talk about, oh, what if it is more, what if it is less? Until we get to that bridge, we cannot let you consume at zero. So we carefully selected. We have urban, peri-urban, rural, and all of that to fit what the PURC has allocated to us in terms of the reckoner, so we can go forward. And so based on that, that's how we did the calculations to go out there. The whole idea is that everybody consuming electricity should start paying, and should start paying something, at least. There are other people that also complain about their meters that are overbilling them. These are all steps to make sure that we can change all of these meters, because meters that are above a certain age are no longer reliable. So a meter is 10 years and above can no longer be reliable. So we have to go out there vigorously and change all of these things. And so we have to increase revenue to be able to support these exercises, pay the IPPs, and pay all the people in the food chain. So this 1 week exercise, and as much as it's driven at raking the revenue, the main aim also on the other side is to make sure that every customer out there is captured, and to make sure we capture enough. Per the statistics report on the last census that was done, it says there are 8.5 million households in Ghana. When we took the map and mapped out the ECG zone, we realized that it's supposed to be about 6.5 million 6.5 million households within the enclave of ECG. Now, what we've also identified is that on our records, we have records of about 4.5 million. So clearly there's a huge gap that needs to be closed. And let's not forget that when they said households, they didn't talk about commercial entities. So we need to find a way to
put 4.5 million includes
commercial entities and households. So we need to work very hard and close that gap. By this means, I'd like to just ask the people of Ghana to be patient with us. They should grant us access. They should speak with us. Let's talk everything over and let's fix it. But as for consuming electricity at zero, it is not possible. You definitely have to pay. If you don't have a meter, you'll be put on a flat rate. We need to close the gap so that we can be apples to apples at every point in time and pay all our outstanding bills.
And of course, be sure to watch playback of that interview on all of our digital platforms. But for now, it's time to expand the conversation. Joining us via Zoom is Adam Yakubu, who's with the Institute for Energy Security. Also with us in studio is Isaac Ofieje, data analyst here at Joy News. Isaac, let's start off with the disparities even in the figures released by the ECG about coverage and those who are entirely on the meter systems.
So if you have household unit of about 8.2 million and ECG is having data on just 4 point something, the deficit is around 2 million housing units. And just like he said, we are not even talking about commercial entities or institutions. We are just talking about households. So it means that the 4 point whatever million data that ECG is having, their coverage is on both households and other commercial units or institutions. So if you look at the data, there's a huge difference, and if they don't close this gap, and it simply means that we're going to start piling up.
And in fact, all of this is connecting to the bigger picture about the International Monetary Fund conditionalities. We'll delve deeper into that shortly. But I want to hear from you, Adam Yakubu, because you're beginning to see the ripple effects on the energy sector, the IPPs, APINAMs. Now there is a possible restructuring going on, and many are wondering what the direct impacts will be on power supply. At least for us as consumers, that's our ultimate aim. What do you project from the IES perspective?
Good afternoon to your listeners. It is sometimes heartbreaking to hear some of the issues the IPPs have tabled before government, because over the years, these debts have been piled up not just overnight, it is a consistent period. And so one would have wondered, why have we waited to get to this point, right? You know, the government failed to get the IPPs to subscribe to the first round of debt restructuring. And the second round is what has been put forth before the IMF, that they would get the debts to come down. Even when at that level, the IPP still took an entrenched position that their debt is not restructurable, given that most of these debts the government owes them are also debts they also owe to commercial banks that finance their operations and their activities. So if government is going to restructure it, it's not just a matter of dealing with them as institutions, but rather dealing with them as institutions that also have other commitments with other agencies and other companies as well. So they took that entrenched position. But we should look at the considerable efforts that have been made over the years. We have ESLA. How much have we made through ESLA? How much have we paid? I remember some time ago, the Ghana Gas Accountants Association came up with an initiative of auditing the losses and the debts that have been raised by the IPP, so that there are instances where there's differentials. Government could make some savings, but because of our inefficiencies and all that, all these are accumulated as debt. And so when you read the IMF document that has been presented that the government has brought out, you would realize that they said there's going to be an audit of the IPPs that are available and their activities to be able to really determine how much does the government owe the IPPs. I think this is one of the bold steps that, when taken, would go a long way to give us a clearer picture beyond just knowing how much we owe. Then we should be able to tell exactly, do we really owe that? There are some instances, well, when you do an audit, you could have some cost savings. And so government should really take that initiative strongly. But all of this falls back to the collection of the revenue. And let's not shy away to commend the ECG's boss, who has taken it up. The revenue mobilization effort is good, but you can still see clearly some of the challenges the institution is facing. The disparity between the number of households that they have their data against what they do not have is so huge. And you can imagine this is all money, and the monies that are used to generate this electricity have to be paid back. So
is it far-fetched if we go back to the argument about not just auditing how much we owe, but trying to take a second look at the power purchase agreements itself? I mean, the individual ones we've signed with all of these power producers. It's come up again, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Yes. Well, I hold a very strong view on the agreements, power purchase agreements, especially the clauses take or pay. You know, when you are signing on to these agreements, that particular clause is what accounts for most of the debt we are seeing. The IPPs generate the power, whether you use it or not. The agreement is that you are supposed to pay for a percentage of it, sometimes up to 60 or 80%. And we are developing countries, and we have to be given some flexibility that, well, this power you have produced, if we do not use it, we can't pay for it. But the clauses, that particular clause is where all IPP debt is hinged around, take or pay. And up to now, nobody has been able to come out with a clear way we can get that particular clause. So, well, it's true that government should relook at the negotiated agreements. Which of them do we still need? How many of them can we at least pay off then we round up those agreements and let the IPPs off our books. Other than that, insofar as they are still in agreement with the nation and with the government, whatever power they generate in the name of Ghana, we have to pay.
Is there an alternative aside having the IPPs in the equation? Because right now they seem to be the biggest headache of the country right now. But if you take them out of the equation, do we have an alternative? Say, maybe looking elsewhere, probably at another line of supply, probably from the grid company, from ECG itself, or trying to find an alternative beyond the IPPs?
So what the alternative we would have expected that Ghana would be exploring as of now is the renewable energy alternative. We have the potential and we have the resources that can grow our renewable component in the energy mix. But you realize that up to now, our renewable component is just a little over 1% or even 1%. Let's zero it down. If you look at the last PURC release on power adjustments, IPPs or the thermal plants are taking up to almost 70%, with our hydro just doing about 30 or so percent. That should tell you how much the IPPs contribute to our energy generation. So for now, you cannot take them out, but you can, they are institutions, so you can engage them well, get a better deal, right? And when you get the better deal, you can bring down the debt. But for now, if we take the IPPs out of the equation as in the generation of our energy, then I'm sorry, we would be in a very serious situation.
Government has made the argument in the past, and I recall that was a big political debate between the NDC and the NPP at the time, that take-up pay not favorable to the nation. In fact, the generational capacity was way above what we needed at the time as a nation. Even in growing demand, we still have excess capacity. And that's why I'm asking the question as to whether or not we can take the IPPs out and find an alternative.
Yeah, so maybe what I would want us to do is to reduce the numbers. How many of them do we have? How many have we subscribed? But the interesting thing is the ECG just signed on to another agreement just recently.
Interesting.
Yes, the ECG just signed, supervised by the Ministry of Energy. They signed an agreement with Aka Energy and there's a clause in there about 60% take or pay. And so you can imagine at this time we are complaining, we still have the agreements coming in. Yes, but like I said, we can look at our projected demand in the next 5-10 years. How many of these IPPs can we keep to meet that projected demand? And how many of them can we let go? Because if we can let them go, letting them go to comes at a cost. So sometimes that is another challenge the government is looking at. How much you need to pay them off so that you can be free, and how much does it cost you to keep them to be paying the generation charges that they give you at the end of every generation period. So that is where we have to do a serious analysis to get a clear picture in the next 10, 20, 15 years. How many of these IPPs do we need to meet our projected demand? When we get that clear picture, I think that we can let some of the IPPs go and we free our books to be able to, because they have clearly stated they won't negotiate their debt. Until then, we wait to see what then happens. Adam Yakubu, thank you. He's with the Institute for Energy Security. Of course, this afternoon, government is also planning to reduce compensation of public sector employees by some 0.5% of GDP. This is containing Ghana's conditionalities in its 3-year program with the International Monetary Fund. The goal is to achieve fiscal discipline and also return the country to economic growth. The document also says wages of public sector workers will be calibrated in a way to ensure a balance between the burden sharing, productivity, and the capacity actually to pay. Isaac Kofi is still with us, and a lot of conditionalities, I must say. Some say this is our own doing. We stated our intent, and the IMF is helping us on that path of economic recovery. But when it comes to the public sector, it's very often a challenge. So how do we strike the balance? And what's been the detail in the document about efficiency and ensuring that we get value for money in terms of what we pay for?
Well, this is relatively different from what we actually did in 2015, where in 2015 we actually placed a net freeze on our wage bill or on the public sector employment. It simply means that in 2015 we were only employing when there's the need, when there's vacancy. But this time around, it's been made clear that there's not going to be any freeze, whether complete freeze or net freeze, on the public sector employment or wage bill. However, what we are going to do is that we are actually going to reduce the wage bill by 0.5% of GDP. If you compute the how do you call it, the value itself, in the IMF documents, they pegged our nominal GDP around about 600 billion, right. Ghana cedis. So if you do the computation, it means that we are going to reduce the wage bill by a little more than 300 million Ghana cedis. You ask yourself, 300 million Ghana cedis is simply not enough, because if you convert it to dollars, you'll be shocked. It's around $30 million. So $30 million, although this time is necessary, is needed, but it's not really significant, because already, if you check the data, the compensation of employees, checking various budget documents, right from 2022 to 2023, has actually gone up by close to 19%, moved from 37.9% billion Ghana cedis to now 44 billion cedis. So clearly, the wage bill actually went up before government even decided to consider bringing it down by that 0.5 percentage point.
So insignificant figure, you say?
Well, I'll be careful to use that word, but I think it's still some cost-saving mechanism. But we need to actually do more in the sense that this time around the problem is not only your local currency, but also your the external or the exchange rate as well. So if you are saving a lot, just like what we are trying to do with the IPPs, the reason why the IPPs, the whole talks have become a little bit like a headache is because we owe them in dollars. You get it? So it means if you're going to pay them, you need some dollars. And that's why the IMF is insisting that we reach an agreement.
And this is where we are likely to face another challenge, the issue about setting priorities. It may be a challenge for the government because there's no clear cut or cap, if I should use that term, on how you go about your employment. But you have your space limited. Well,
so there's an issue of burden sharing where government feels that the 30% cut in the president's salary and other people and other things they've done, saving the wage bill about 300 million Ghana cedis is enough. But if you compare it to what we did in 2015, I still feel that I have no idea. I do
but
not
that was
understand
deep
why,
cutting
I do not
as compared to what's happening
I don't
now.
understand why we don't have the freeze, probably because of the agreement government reached with Labour. Remember, Labour was asking for 60% rise.
Then it was slashed
to 30. One of the conditions at the negotiation table was that government employ fresh people into the labour force. So I feel those were some of the reasons why they could not agree on a complete or a net freeze on public sector. But as we speak now, the wage bill is so high, close to 45 billion.
It's saturated, if we can describe it that way. In terms of prospective employment, what's likely to happen in terms of looking at the adjustment, the predictions, and situating the 0.5% into government's fiscal space that could provide the opportunity for government to employ more? Well,
so it's unfortunate that there's no clause
expressly limiting that.
Expressly, compelling government not to employ. It's unfortunate that we don't have such a clause in there where we are only hoping to reduce wage bill by 0.5% of GDP. It simply means that going forward, government will still have the room to employ, but I'm sure they will also consider so many things before, if they want to increase the wage bill, they do. But as we speak now, the wage bill is still high, and I feel that the 0.5% reduction in terms of GDP, we could do more if we look at other avenues.
Isaac, thank you. Let's talk about women. Sanitary products in Ghana are currently enlisted on Chapter, of course, 96 of the harmonized system, and that actually attracts some 32.5% of tax on imported sanitary parts, which is made up of some 20% of imports duty and 12.5% thereabout of value-added tax. Now, many have called for the scrapping of these taxes, arguing that it makes it impossible for teenage girls and in some cases adult women to adequately care for their bodies while menstruating. They issued a statement on this yesterday as the world celebrated the World Menstrual Hygiene Day yesterday, and they plan to hit the streets tomorrow in demand that government remove these taxes to help them break down the cost of sanitary pads. We'll hear from St. Ghana, one of the institutions and CSOs making that demand, pressing on government. But first, though, a report we've put together capturing how a 12-year-old girl in need of money to buy sanitary pads was defiled by her supposed helper, who also impregnated and infected her with HIV.
Go out to it, and then I realized all the boys were like, hey.
At age 12, Efia had to move in to live with her aunt in Techiman, where she was enrolled in a school. It was at the school she first had her menses, something she lacked knowledge about. She soiled her uniform, and boys in her class made fun of her. This was the beginning of her shattered life because she had no access to sanitary pad.
I used a toilet roll to cover that place, but because of the experience that happened, I didn't want to go out, so I didn't want anyone to laugh at me. So this guy, I was very young, so when I used the tissue paper, he saw me and then he was like, Adebia Kawechi. The tissue, I think the blood overflowed in the tissue, and then he made me wash.
Why didn't you go home? Why did you follow him to his house to go wash yourself?
I saw him as a father figure. So when I told him what is going on, he told me he'll give me 50 pesos to school, and then when I'm menstruating, he'll give me a pad.
But this was a bait. Efia agreed to the man's proposal to come out of the shame she had to endure any time she was in her menses. She was defiled and later got pregnant at age 14. During antenatal, she was tested HIV positive.
I was 5 months pregnant.
Wow.
So my mom asked me who. I told her it was the guy. When my mom called him, he told my mom he doesn't know me anyway.
He doesn't know you from anywhere?
He doesn't know me. That he's not the cause. So we went, whenever I go for antenatal, there was this time they told me to go for lab, and then I realized I was HIV positive. We did the test for 2 times, and it all came out positive. At that moment, I blame my mom. I told her it's her fault. Why did she get sick for me to go there and then something like this to happen to me? And then she was encouraging me that they said there is drugs there, that's not the end of the world, and then all that. But in my mind, I told myself I'm not going to take the drug. I'll just wait for death to come and take me.
Unfortunately, such cases of abuse and defilement are not reported for appropriate redress. Efia, now 19 years, could not further her education after completing junior high school. She believes she would not have fallen prey and suffered such ordeal if she could access sanitary pad at her tender age.
If anybody had supported you with sanitary pads, genuinely, without any strings attached, would you have had sex at that age of 12, 13?
No.
You're sure?
I wouldn't have asked, because even when my auntie wasn't giving me food, I had friends who support me with food. So if I had gotten the pad, I wouldn't even think of
sex.
Yes, because that was the only thing that I saw, say, yes, I should do it, since it's saving me from disgrace and then all that. Why don't I do it?
In commemoration of this year's World Menstrual Day, Love FM in Kumasi will be donating boxes of reusable and disposable sanitary pads to schools in deprived communities in the Amansi Central District.
And that's a sad state in which many of these young girls find themselves. It's a good time to bring in now one man who's been pressing the charge and asking other CSOs to join forces to end period poverty. Nelson Richardson Mandela is director for RENEL, a child rights organization, and also a member of the coalition that will be staging that protest tomorrow. Thank you, sir, for your time. So you've seen such a very touching story there, that little girl impregnated simply because of period poverty. Looking at what you are asking government to do you feel is something that difficult, something that will take a lot for government to change, or it's as simple as that, just scrapping it and that will end all of the problems?
Right. Thank you and good evening to your listeners. We don't think that is difficult for government to do because what we are just asking government is to just make sanitary pad and medical necessity, like the way he does with condoms that are being given for free. So, you know, the story of this girl, this girl's education has been shattered because of availability of sanitary pad, and it's not her fault. I'm not sure she would, if there was an option for her not to choose between being menstruating or not, I'm not sure she would have choose that option. So I'm sure what we are asking for.
Are you still with us?
We are just helping. Hello?
Yes, we're still with you, sir.
So
yes.
government is self-support. Yeah, government is self-support the Agenda 2030 of the SDGs. And in that Agenda 2030, we have SDG 3, 4, 5, 6. And they all talks about inclusivity and equity. So we believe that once we support that agenda, we are just going out tomorrow just to remind government that whatever that you have supported, there are SDGs in there that makes it should not allow you to, tax women for what they have no fault of theirs. Yeah, so I believe that the second lady also, I'm sure she might be the one that really prompt the vice president before he came out in 2020 during their campaign launch in Cape Coast, where he promised that all sanitary pad tax will be scrapped when they come to power. So we don't think this should be a difficult thing for government to do, because this is not like a political gain that we are talking about. We are just talking about a natural phenomenon that we should just try as much as possible to help our women. I believe the first lady and the second lady are all know what we are talking about, and they can feel the pain more. So I believe this can happen if we all come on board.
How about asking the businesses, those operating these businesses and, of course, producing the sanitary product, of trying as much as possible to reduce their prices? That's equally another way of dealing with it.
Yeah, so let's say, for instance, if you are a dealer in sanitary pad and you pay these huge taxes, how then do you bring your sanitary pad up to say, I want to reduce it? Because you are paying more, so definitely the burden will be on the woman who is purchasing it, or maybe the man who is purchasing it for the ward, or maybe the wife. So I think the ultimate goal is for government to just look at it. We are not putting any pressure on government. We know times are hard, but this is a necessity. This is something that must be done now, not tomorrow.
Justice nominee Gertrude Tokno at her vetting pointed out that we should carry out what she's suggesting as proper targeting, where we go after young children in school, schoolgirls, try as much as possible to support them with these sanitary products, and then make the working class or the adult women pay for their sanitary pads. How about such a policy approach? Will that be better?
Yeah, so we all know in Ghana, let's say, for instance, your ward, you will buy sanitary pad for your ward. So if the Chief Justice nominee is saying that it should be free, they should be good for girls, how do you identify this pad is going to be for girls? And definitely it's the working class that buys the pad for the women. So there shouldn't be anything like the working class should be targeted and all that. They are the ones that purchase the sanitary pad and for the girls. So we believe that it should be scrapped. There shouldn't be any option or maybe any games around it. Thank God that she has identified that there is a tax on sanitary products, which I believe she might also have a young girl also in the house as well, where she purchases as well. And she knows how expensive it is. That's why she came up with that. So we believe that it should be scrapped outrightly, and nothing like anybody should be taxed, because this is not right. I think that's a gender-based.
Okay, and about tomorrow's exercise, the decision to go onto the streets now to pour out your frustrations. First of all, how many civil society groups do we have embarking on this exercise, and what is likely to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, so tomorrow our
Nelson. Okay. It appears we're having some challenges connecting to Nelson, but we do understand that Nelson, together with some civil society organizations, will be hitting the streets tomorrow. We'll watch that space closely and bring you up to speed with what's happening within that cycle, where there's pressure mounting from civil society groups asking government to scrap taxes on sanitary products. And we are your election headquarters. We turn our attention now to the governing party, because flag bearer hopeful of the New Patriotic Party, Dr. Afriyie Akoto, is challenging journalists to interrogate the basis of political polls and not consider them as gospel truth. According to him, such polls are usually sponsored and do not reflect the exact reality on the ground. The former Food and Agriculture Minister made these comments in his address to supporters who picked up and presented nomination forms for his candidature. My colleague Samuel Mbura has more in this report.
Supporters of the former Agric Minister, Dr. Afriyie Akoto, thronged the headquarters of the MPP to pick nomination forms for his candidature. According to the group, he has a proven record of competence, citing the Planting for Food and Jobs policy as a game changer in the Akufo-Addo government. They therefore believe that, given the nod, he would do more as a leader of the MPP and president of the country.
He has let more food come to Ghana, especially Abubrushi area. We have yam, plantain, cocoa yam, everything at Agogoshi market. So I'm supporting him so that when he comes, he becomes a flag bearer. He will let more food come to Ghana.
I'm rooting for Akoto simply because I've seen the job he has done at the agri sector. Comparatively, there is none that has come to do a job as he has done. And I believe that at least when he takes the mantle, he'll be able to move the nation to where we need.
I believe in him. I believe his policies, the competency, the resilience, the strength and the loyalty.
Akoto give us food when we are in need of food. His program gives us food in Ghana. So I think if he be president, he can do better. That's why I'm supporting him.
Spokesperson for the campaign team, Dr. Prince Amuzu, indicated the supporters who have mobilized resources to purchase the forms are farmers who have trust in the candidature of Dr. Afriyie Akoto and expressed gratitude for their support.
These farmers and friends are all across the country, and they have come out boldly to say they want to encourage Dr. Akoto. The delegates, the farmers, the good people of Ghana, we say thank you.
The forms were later presented to Dr. Afriyie Akoto at his campaign office, where he admonished supporters to disregard any polls, suggesting he is not capable of winning the elections, while challenging journalists to interrogate the basis of such polls because they are not realistic.
I have never sponsored any poll. Find out who is sponsoring those polls. If I sponsor a poll, I bet you they will say that I'm first. But I won't, because it's self-deceiving. It doesn't serve any purpose. We know what you are doing on the ground. So all the polls in the world can say whatever they want, but we are talking about the 900 people who will be voted, the super delegates, and the 210,000 delegates who will be voted on the 4th of November. That's what matters. So I don't know the basis, and you as a journalist, you should be questioning the basis of these polls. You just take them as gospel. But you don't even know the statistical significance of them, the population, the sample size, all those things, to be able to intelligently question them. You just take them as, oh, this poll is saying this person is leading, this person is leading. Let them lead, but the delegates have the last word.
The picking of nomination forms by Dr. Afriyie Akoto brings the number of aspirant hopeful in the MPP presidential race to 5. Meanwhile, nominations are still opened for any interested qualified party member. Samuel Mbura, Joy News.
It's now confirmed 4 individuals up in the race, and we're expecting a lot more, because initially over 7 candidates put out their names, indicating that they will be picking up the forms. We're still waiting for Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, Trade Minister, former Trade Minister Alan Kojo Tremating, and the others who are lining up to be a part of this race. But first of all, I want to bring in my colleague Samuel Mbura, who's been all throughout the week, last week, this week, monitoring events at the headquarters of the NPP. Sami, now Dr. Koto says, okay, I've received the forms, I'll think about it, but I'm in the race. But what I want you to know is that just forget the polls and what the research is saying about who's likely to lead and who's likely to be the next candidate. I'm the best man for this job. Why is he saying so?
You know, there was a recent poll that suggested that the other candidates, Dr. Baumia and Alan, were ahead of him. So a question was asked as to whether he's perturbed about the fact that some of these polls are not putting him in a good position because it is good for the political drama. But his point was that these polls are sponsored. So journalists should not just look at the face value of it and then judge based on that. At least you need to know the basis of it. Interrogate the figures further. Who are those conducting the polls? What is the motive behind this particular poll? A reason he said that even if it's the case that he sponsors a poll today, he'll be number one. So his conviction is that these polls are not realistic. So journalists should not just
but did you provide evidence to say, okay, for instance, in the last poll research that was done by, say, this group, this is who sponsored them and this was the outcome?
So he is unable to tell us whether there are people who came out to own up to say, oh, we are the people who sponsored this. But his conviction is that a reason some of these people are leading in the polls is that they are sponsoring it. That's his conviction, but he's unable to give us the facts that, okay, this person or PMI checks, this is what I've been able to, to confirm that so-and-so candidates has gone to pay and then the polls are predicting a win.
So this group picking up the forms on behalf of the former Agri Minister, are they really confident that he comes on top when it comes to the ratings and following within the delegates of the party?
Well, their point has been made clear. In the interaction I had with them, they held the conviction that the former Agri Minister has a proven record. If you go to the Planting for Food and Jobs policy, for instance, they say it is a game changer in the Akufo-Addo government. Okay. So someone who has brought food to farmers should be, competent enough to lead the party. Now, interestingly, those who came there watching the picture, you see that they are women. These are market women.
Oh.
Yeah, so market women.
So market women putting their money together and buying forms.
Exactly, that's what they are telling me. So
these are Makola market.
Yeah, Abu
okay.
So their point is that
just Accra or all across the country.
Accra.
We need to be sure about that.
Yeah, so they confirmed to me that it's just Accra.
Okay.
So the northern part, Kumasi and other western and eastern are not part. The reason they are strongly behind him is that at the time he was a minister of Agric, there was abundance of food at Agogloshi market. You heard one of the women saying that, at the time he was a minister, we had enough food at Agogloshi market.
And it wasn't expensive?
That's what they are saying. So that is why...
Not what you believe.
No, that's what they are saying.
Okay, I see. Let's talk about the four candidates in this race. Four of them now, as we speak. Oh, okay, five.
So
he's adding to it to make it five. So let's talk about them briefly. We have Boakye Jako.
Yeah, he was the first person. Boakye Jako, the former energy minister, on our screens there, he was the first person to pick nominations the day that the nominations were opened. By 10 o'clock, his team were already there to pick the nomination. Second one was a former general secretary of the NPP, Kennedy Japan.
Yes.
As you can see him on our screen. He didn't come there himself. He came. His team actually came to pick the forms for him. We also had friends of Adainimo.
Francis Adainimo.
Yeah, he's a former MP for Mampong.
Yes, I recall speaking to him.
Yeah, he has contested
late
before.
Last year.
Yeah, he has contested before. So this is his second time of going for the race. Right. So his friends also came to pick the forms on his behalf. So they actually mobilized resources. I asked the leader who told me that they mobilized resources. It's not coming from Adainimo. They feel like he's a very competent person. So why not?
Okay.
Let's gather the resources and then do it for him. Then the fourth person was it's a leading member and a two-time, he has contested this before, Dr. Kofi Konadu.
I think it's been also running all throughout the race. Just like Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
Exactly. So he still thinks that he'll be able to to pull the strings and get to...
Okay, so that makes it four, and then we have Dr. Koto Free adding to that and making it five.
Five, exactly.
Where are the rest? That's the big question now.
So the rest... Interestingly, there was a team that came to pick a form for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the vice president. That was on Friday.
Alhaji Bawumia, you mean?
Yeah, Alhaji Bawumia. But interestingly, there was a drama.
Yeah.
this group of people calling themselves Friends of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. You know, he has fan clubs dotted across the country. So this was, they said this is a nationwide club that came to pick the form at the cost of 50,000 cedis for him.
Okay, so the NPP is also selling that at 50,000.
So the form is 50,000. Filing is a different fee.
Okay.
So we don't know. We don't know.
I'll ask Richard. So
when I spoke with the national chairman, Mr. Stephen Ayeso's team, he said when they are returning the forms, they'll be told how much to pay, but he didn't confirm to me how much exactly they are paying. So the group were denied picking the form because they didn't get an authorization note from Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's campaign team.
So what's that supposed to be?
So what it means is this. If I am going on behalf of Blaise Soga for a contest, I'm going with my team, I should get an authorization note from you because
let's use another name. Let's use another name because I'm not in the race. I'm not in the NPP race for now.
Blaise is going to pick forms on behalf of Samuel Mbura.
Okay, I see. That's easier.
Not for the Bongo City.
Okay, I see.
So you're going to pick a form on my behalf. You need to get an authorization note.
First of all,
from me. So when you get there, you present it to the team. The team will now, based on that, call for confirmation.
Wow.
Then they now present the form for you. So that was the reason they didn't give the form to them. They asked them to go to the office of the vice president.
Seek his permission
before they come back. But the group actually told me that the reason they didn't inform or get the authorization note from him before coming was to just surprise him.
Oh, they wanted to surprise the vice president.
They wanted to surprise the vice president. And there were not actually many. I could count them, they were up to 50. They came in some oven buses there. But the information I picked was that because of the caliber of candidates involved, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, vice president vying for a position, at least you have many people coming. If not, there'll be a propaganda, a reason they were denied. But I understand sometime in the course of the week, he should be picking the form. You know, they have from now till 24th of June to fulfill nomination.
Okay, Sami, just hold on tight. Let's bring in the communications director for the New Patriotic Party, Richard Ahyangba. Thank you. Quite a tough weekend. I mean, the past few weeks for you, working in Kumeu, trying to get your seat safe and locked in. You're looking up to the Asin North seat as well. You're eyeing that as a political party. We'll talk about all of that later on. But for now, let's focus on the internal race within your political party. And let's pick up from why you denied that group the opportunity to just pick up forms. These are forms that you're selling on behalf of the vice president.
Any candidate who is seeking to run to become the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party is qualified to pick nomination form to do so. But my thinking will probably align with what your colleague there just explained to you, that you must have reference from the person you are picking the form for, unless you are picking it for yourself. And if you are a party member, you could do that. But if you claim you're picking it for the campaign of the vice president, I think that the requirement for some indication of his acceptance for that action, I think is useful. So I think that it's not a problem. If really the vice president's campaign wants this group to pick it for him, or for them, they would give them authorization. I don't think that is a big deal. In the right time, assuming the vice president is going to run, I think that he will make the decision to pick the form, and whoever comes to pick it for him, he will authorize.
Yes, when it comes to the sales of forms also, it's a form of internally generated revenue for the party. The party is in need of funds as well. So why not allow people to just pick it up? After all, it will show up the kitty for the party.
Yeah, I think this is a very nebulous point. But I think that the substantial issue is that if you're picking for a particular candidate and you don't have the authorization of that candidate, then that's problematic. And the forms we're issuing to individuals, so we're just not raising funds. There's essence for it. So we're not raising funds. If we're just raising funds, yes, certainly we'll take anybody's money, provided it's actually legitimate money, we'll take it. But this is specifically tied to a contest. And you know that we have a provision in our constitution that requires us to undertake certain processes if the applicants exceed a certain number, 5, then it triggers a certain process. So if candidates are not running, I want to know those who are running or who are not running. So if groups begin to pick forms randomly for an individual, at least we want to know who they are picking the form for. And in this case, the vice president, without authorization from his campaign. I think this is a decision that is taken because it is a vice president involved. I've seen a group pick the form for Honorable Boakye Japo. The first day, they were the first people who showed up to pick the form. So I think that this is really not a big deal. When the vice president is ready, his campaign is ready to pick the form, they'll come in and pick the form. I don't think this is a problem right now.
Well, you have 5 as we speak, 5 as we speak. Any more nomination will mean that you'll have to go for a superdelegates conference.
Yeah, so there'll be a special electoral college that is constituted to shortlist, if it's 6, to shortlist the number to 5. And from the look of things, that's probably what is going to happen. But mind you, though, that there's some requirement in our Constitution that specifically Article 13(7), that all candidates must meet. And in meeting that requirement, and if we still have that 7, more than the 5, right, then that process by all means will kick in. And I think that from the look of things, I have no doubt that all these individuals will pick the form from Boakye Japo to Kobna Adenimo, Dr. Konedo Apreko, and Dr. Freya Koto. You have outstanding personalities like Honorable Alancha Manting and then the person of the vice president. So if you add that, you have 7, even just before you make room for others who might come in. So clearly, that process, from look of things, would be triggered, and a date for actually set in the event that it happens, I think, for 26th of August, if you have more than 5.
Well, we're just having a conversation earlier about the cost. 50,000 for picking up nomination forms. You're not clear on how much it will cost for any candidate seeking to file their nominations. At least there was a concern when the largest opposition, National Democratic Congress, was going in for their race, concerns about the exorbitant amount. Are you mindful of these concerns, even from the Ghanaian populace, about how, expensive the process is becoming? Trying to be a political leader. It's become a concern. Are you mindful as a political party?
Well, certainly. The issue with filing and filing fees, from nomination to filing fees, a small part of it is to try to get the resources that would run the process. Because it costs money to do these political exercises to culminate in who leads the party. So it's capital intensive. So some of these filing fees, nomination fees, and the rest goes to funding that process. But
have you decided on the figure already? How much it will cost when you're filing?
Yeah, so I think National Council is taking a decision on that, and it seems the filing fee, our memory serves me right from the last meeting, will be 300,000 for filing, the 50,000 for nomination.
So 350,000 in all
for the process, yes. So that's I think give or take about 150 or so. I don't know, shy of the NDC as filing a nomination fee. I think it's about 500,000. I think, if my memory serves.
How about arrangements for female candidates? Because you should be giving a special dispensation to them, are you?
Right. So that often, unfortunately, with the presidential race doesn't apply. It applies with the parliamentary elections, where exception is made for female candidates financially to be able to come in by slashing it down for them. So that provision is made. National Council is taking a decision on that as well. So female contestants in the parliamentary elections will pay a bit less than the male candidates. But the presidential there's no provision for.
Right. Well, we need to go, but any final words for, grassroots of the party and delegates who will be participating in this exercise?
Well, certainly, as you know, we are seeking to demonstrate the qualities of our party, put it on display, that we believe in democracy. So all of us must conduct ourselves in a way that will continue to represent the party in the best possible light. So people supporting people must be decorous in their conversation, and we must understand that it's internal contest, and we must be civil and ensure that the ultimate fight, which is the decision to win the 2024 election, we protect that possibility for our party by being decorous and not mudslinging in ways that will be damaging to candidate.
Grateful. We'll see you again, Richard. Thank you. I'm grateful for your time here on The Pulse. Let's, of course, expand the conversation now and speak about the man of the moment, the man who's the latest to pick up his form. I'm talking about Dr. Akoto Afriyie. In studio with us is Ken Wood-Noah. He's a former regional chairperson of the New Patriotic Party, Volta region, and also a spokesperson and a member of Dr. Afriyie Akoto's campaign team. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you, sir, and great to be seeing you once again. You went under the radar, now you're coming back stronger with Dr. Afriyie. Why Dr. Afriyie, by the way?
We have, the party itself has oversupply of presidential materials. But definitely we must zero down on one, considering a number of factors, the Ghanaian environment, the political environment, in our party. Some of us have decided to root for Dr. Afriyie Akoto for a number of reasons. His background, solid academic, professional background, international exposure, and his performance even at the Greek ministry. And his role, in the party itself. And looking at the near polarization of the party at this stage, a compromise candidate who is likely to stay the course, ability to unify the party after primaries and launch a credible campaign that will carry the entire party.
Is what you're looking for.
What we are
but then
looking
his period in office will be very much contested. The fact that we saw the highest level of food inflation and inflation in general during his period is not being able to bid down the prices of food on the market. That will stare him in the face, correct?
For food inflation, I think that cannot be isolated from the general, macroeconomic environment. So for that one, I think we cannot fault him for it. Why don't also talk about the near food security that we've achieved under his tenure? The outputs. The
but if you're secure, Ghanaians should be able to buy. That's also,
of course,
the analogy. So it will come up. It will come up again.
We cannot isolate that from that the macro economic environment. We can also not isolate it from our people trying to take advantage of ourselves. You saw what he did when they have to move to the hinterland, break the supply the middleman ship, and bring food directly to, as it were, bring down. Those are some of the practical steps he was taking prior to his resignation, as the minister.
If you look at the list, 5 persons have picked up so far, and all of them. You've dealt with
all of them.
You've worked with all of them. Why is he confident that amongst these 5 so far, he'll be the most preferred candidate?
And that is what I mentioned. That his silent, work in the party and in government, his achievements, and the fact that he's done his own groundwork. He was a field person who had spent more time in the field than in the office, and also have interacted so much with the party people. And I have been part of some of those trips to see, assess his acceptability, his, popularity among the party people. He's one of the most quiet heroes in the party. He has never made noise about his support for the party and party people. He's been quiet about some of those things. And those are some of the solid, strengths that we are going to dwell upon.
But in terms of experience, take a look at Dr. Konadu Apreko, for instance. This is one man who's been, I mean, he's not new to this race at all. And many will believe that after the likes of John Ajekun Kufuor, the likes of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo,
and have become his 10 or what?
Precisely.
That would be different. You know? That would be different from experience.
You know, so,
experience
he's been there for a while. That's
an experienced driver is not the one who always hits, the speed rumps right in front of Joy FM studios here, but he knows that there is a speed rump there, and he hits it several times. That does not make the person experience. Okay? That is not to undermine his campaign, though. But experience is not what happens to you, but what you've been able to do if what happens to you. And the fact that Doctor is entering this race for the first time, okay, will prove, his strength beyond those who have been running all along, all these years.
It's the reason for which I'm asking the question. You've been around, and in fact,
I've been around.
You know the tradition of the
party,
New Patriotic Party. Do you subscribe to the idea that it's about the convention you have, a tradition that someone follows after the other?
There is no such tradition. There is no such
that establishment.
We don't have any establishment. We don't have any such tradition in our party.
You don't?
We don't have any such tradition. I mean, at least as far as the New Patriotic Party is concerned, which we have joined or formed. Dubois came.
Yes.
Leonardo was a Dubois campaign manager. At the following primary, Leonardo had moved. Dr. Furiata and the rest have all moved from his camp for whatever reason and joined Kufuor. Okay? And Kufuor took the day. Even before he became the president, Leonardo had challenged him in 1998. Leonardo has also challenged Kufuor, and Kufuor won. So there is no established tradition that if this man comes and he follows this person, no. Kufuor, for example, in 1992, took the third position. So if it's a tradition, then probably Dr. Jani Selby should have followed Eduboy, not Kufuor. So it's a fair and open context.
So you believe in making it competitive?
It is competitive.
And now you're having so many names come up, for instance.
Okay.
It will push your party into the super delegates level where you now have to screen, cut down the numbers.
That is a real tradition.
Yeah, but that's going to pose a lot of challenge to you. Just look at, for
we
instance...
We have always managed that.
Yeah,
it is our tradition.
So but look at the comparative advantage your opponents are having, for instance. They've had a smooth run with choosing their next presidential candidate. You're not going to have a rigorous exercise in terms of fighting over the next person.
A tradition of an open, competitive contest. Not to mention the fact that the party itself has oversupply of presidential materials. If you look at the tradition of the NDC, okay, they don't have an open contest. Rawlings, it was a one-man party that he declared, the so-called Swedru Declaration. His successor. Then the successor picked his running mate. Then, unfortunately, his unfortunate and sad, untimely demise, and that man took over. They have never tolerated, not even when Rawlings, the founder's wife, had tried.
Yeah, but
they have never tolerated, contest.
Yeah, but on record, John Mahama was contested by Dr. Kwabena Dufo,
Was that a contest? Was it a contest?
Okay, well, if it's not a contest, let's talk about your party, by the way. Okay, so let's talk about Dr. Kutu and his plans. What message is he selling to the grassroots of the party?
Dr. Kutu wants to use his experience and international exposure, okay, and knowledge of the field to use agriculture as the key to unlock Ghana's prosperity, development, and job creation. We have always made noise about this industry, what is our comparative advantage as a nation is agriculture.
Right.
Cocoa had been the mainstay of our economy all these years. But do you know that, unlike Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana had never had any deliberate public, support for that sector. It's been peasant farmers, of course. Peasant farming also is adjudged to be more efficient. Right. It's peasant farmers who have produced cocoa over the even pre-colonial era that has sustained our economy, apart from gold and the rest that people are interested in. The only area that brought education to Ghana is cocoa. Cocoa money brought education to Ghana and brought prosperity to us. So if we have deliberately committed, that is Akoto's stand, deliberately committed ourselves. Somebody just brought a few pots of cocoa and that had become the mainstay. Assuming we have a deliberate program, to invest in 3 crops, that is masterminded. Now we have a whole authority that is going to handle that. People don't know or cannot realize that in recent times, people have planted more coconuts in this country. I am myself a coconut farmer. I've planted more coconuts in this country than we have seen since colonial days.
And that's because of that fair?
Yes, it's deliberate. It's a deliberate. Right. We have replanted or spearheaded replanting of cocoa and coffee in old or former cocoa regions.
So that's his plan, to
leverage
agriculture.
Yeah,
he's had the opportunity all of these years. I mean, he served as a member of the economic management team. He's been a member of the economic management team.
His difficulty had been the priority of government. Where the leader's priority probably is free senior high school and things. He might be thinking that, agriculture would have financed education. Agriculture would have financed our industries. Agriculture would have financed all the, the development things we are talking about. And that is where we are supposed to be going. Talk about Malaysia and the rest. We strike our chest and say they came from palm kernel from here, and today they use that, to develop Malaysia. We are proud of it.
Okay. Anyway, we look forward to that contest. What message do you have, and we're about wrapping up, what message do you have for the grassroots of the NPP with regard to
Mine would be a very humble appeal to the delegates. At this level is the delegates. That they should not be carried, just carried along by the wind and the fanfare. Apart from the fact that we have done our groundwork, there is the need for us to understand that who has the mix, the background, experience, and record that can affect the life of Ghanaians, planting for food and jobs, who can make agriculture very attractive for you to even leave this studio and go into farming.
Wow, yes, I would love to do that.
Yes, definitely. That is what we are looking. That is when there is deliberate, when we have free senior high school, and there is free agriculture input. I know you will leave this place and go into agriculture.
Okay, but
that is where you want to put
indeed, you should tell President Akufo-Addo to start that, and then we'll have Dr. Free to continue.
I'm saying that it is leadership. If you understand leadership.
You feel the president
probably the trust of your interview, this place, this moment will be different if somebody else was sitting there. That is your priority. That is what you want to ask. The president has his priority. And his priority is going to be using agric to public, commit public fund to agriculture, develop agriculture to finance our development.
We'll wait for that moment. The contest is
and it will affect more Ghanaians than any other policy that any government, probably next to free education, will be agriculture, because you and I eat. And if you and I are involved in agriculture, we will have sufficient and enough surplus to then talk about industrialization. You cannot be chewing sugarcane as a dessert or, what do we call it, pastime, and say you want to do sugar when you don't even have a
okay, that's a shade to one of the candidates. I will not mention his name here.
Oh, no. This is not anybody at all.
Definitely. But I know.
Industries must be based on something.
I know. That's a political statement. We'll take it aside. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Ken Udo also for joining us. He's with Dr. Akotefri, his campaign team. And right from Ghana, we're taking you to Nigeria because they have a new president sworn in. Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the 16th president of Africa's most populous nation. What's the future holding for this nation and its democracy? We'll talk about it, plus tell you about my guests who are joining us on Zoom already as we delve into the details of our discussion. Just stay with us briefly. We'll return and zoom into Nigeria. Please stay. Of his inaugural speech there, but I want to bring in James Ugochukwu. He's the co-convener, Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room. They monitored the presidential election process. Now we're in the post-era. James, welcome to the polls. Starting off, first of all, by that instructive comment by Bola Tinubu, indicating that the election actually reflects the will of the people. It's almost as though he's confident that this court case is going nowhere. Kindly unmute for me so I can hear the point you're making, James. James, kindly unmute for me so I can get the point you're making.
You can hear me now?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you for having me from this side. And yes, we listened to the president's speech. And of course, if you watch Nigerian political space from 1999 to date, you see that after the election, the next thing is the opposition going to the court. And of course, why opposition go to the court is the perception that the election was not conducted the way it should be. So of course, as the president that has been sworn in today, yes, from his own perspective, of course, the election was free and fair. And from the perspective of the opposition, it wasn't free and fair. So it's left for the court to determine his fate when the tribunal proceeds up to the Supreme Court level. But for now, he's the president that has been sworn in, and of course, the will of governors must move forward in Nigeria, and every Nigerian should do all their best to make sure that they put the country first, to keep the country moving, pending the determination of the ruling of the Supreme Court.
And you were in that strong room when, of course, or the coalition center, when the opposition political parties were raising challenges about the process itself that led to the declaration of Bola Tinubu as the winner. Looking at how fast the process has moved, now he's been sworn in. The expectation is to get the buy-in from all of these political parties. Do you see that happening? Because that will be crucial to a smooth running of the federal state of Nigeria.
Well, the buy-in from the opposition now is a function of how he handles his new cabinet. He handles the cabinet in such a way that we normally have, which is a winner take it all. Of course, there's going to be a backlash from the opposition. But if he opens a government of national unity where everybody is carried along, everybody is given a substantial role to play in this particular new government, of course, that will be reduced. What Nigeria yearns for is a good governance, good governance and a democracy that delivers the dividends to everybody. So we are hoping that he is going to prove his naysayer wrong in the few coming 100 days in office, that he is the game changer, and of course he's walking his talk. During his inauguration, he made a lot of promises, and we hope that this is something that is going to fulfill, and as he carries on the mantle of leadership starting from today.
And post-election, experts say, is the most fragile part of every democracy. Looking at Nigerian transition now, would you say that all is said and done, or Bola Tinubu has a lot more work to do?
Of course, there's no gainsaying that there's a huge work for him to do that. I even pity him as his cabinet. Nigeria is really under a huge debt deficit. Unemployment is rising, or has risen to a high level, almost 24%. Interest rate is high, not to talk of the insecurity that has been disturbing the country for the past 8 years. So these are the issues that you need to tackle as a matter of urgency. So it's a huge, huge task ahead of him, and we are hoping that as he's resuming office today, he's getting his cabinet in place, and of course assigning duties to all departments, militaries, and agencies to keep the ground running.
And we take a look at some of the issues he's been pointing out, vowing firmly to deal with corruption. it's almost like a never-ending problem in Nigeria. For a president to promise that will be a difficult task.
Well, when Nigerians elected President Muhammad Buhari in 2015, part of the things that gave him the victory was, his zero tolerance or his corruption, during his military days at head of state. Yes, corruption is highly deep in this country, and of course, it has been the bane of our development as a country. So we are hoping that he's not only making that promise by walking the talk. What do we mean by walking the talk? Giving the anti-graft agency all the powers that they need to deal with corrupt government officials, no matter how highly placed. These are the things we need from any government that is in power now. Corruption is dealing with Nigerians seriously, and it's something that the government needs to give the anti-graft agency all the backings and all the powers they need to prosecute anti-corruption, corruption issues or cases to its logical conclusion. For instance, the past administration performed woefully when it comes to anti-corruption fight. There's so much to reduce the anti-corruption agency to the point that the only thing they are pursuing are cyber criminals, but while the main politicians are going scot-free. So we are hoping to see a change in this perspective in this new administration.
So in terms of the democracy itself and the possible ripple effect on the West Africa region, what would you say that is?
Okay, I think what we have been able to get done as Nigerians is that despite all the tensions preceding the election and despite all the manner we conducted the election, we still emerged as a democracy, even though we are not a green democracy by international standard. And this we are not under military coup, and of course we are not under military regime, and of course our military and security organs have already said that they will never be part of the political process. So it's a takeaway from us, and of course it's something that we are hoping that this new administration will extend this influence to other parts of West African region. Of course, he said that in his foreign policy that his major concern is to consolidate peace in most of the West African sub-region in that order. Before we now talk of the African Union, and of course he has said that he's going to work with ECOWAS to ensure that peace has been restored to different parts of West Africa, including those states that are under military regime and all that. So we are hoping that with this, and of course being the big brother of the rest of Africa, is going to push forward for a lot of reforms in the region.
And the case before the courts, the tribunal, will be proceeding right after, of course, the inauguration. What do you look forward to as part of the process and the expectation from the opposition parties?
Well, with respect to the case, what we are looking forward to is having the judiciary to be as independent as possible. We want to see the judiciary that are looking the case from both sides, and of course applying the rule of law the way it's supposed to be. So we are hoping that the Supreme Court will look at the facts from both the opposition parties and all the other parties that have brought petitions against the incumbent, and of course look at every angle before making their decision. And on their making their decision, it should be as impartial as possible, and of course for the best interest of democracy, and of course for the best interest of the country, without minding whose ox is God.
Anyway, we would have to leave it here for now. James Guchuku, thank you for spending some time with us here on the Joy News channel, and we wish the Nigerian people all the best in the coming days. We're taking a break here. You're still watching The Pulse, so we'll be right back. Starting next week, the Ghana Revenue Authority will begin the implementation of a new law which will get importers of goods to pay VAT upfront at the ports before clearing. This will apply only to importers who have not registered with the GRA for VAT collections. And how will all of this unfold, and who will be affected out of this exercise? Let's get a better understanding from Benjamin Otu, who's a senior revenue officer at the Ghana Revenue Authority, joining us. right here in studio. Mr. Otu, thank you for spending some time with us here on The Pulse. And many are wondering what the essence of this directive is. Can you help us understand why the GRA is taking this step?
All right, thank you. Traditionally, when it comes to value-added tax, usually it's very difficult and very challenging to get a compliance rate. As a result of that, the Ghana Revenue Authority has come out with a policy to target importers who are registrable for VAT purposes, yet to register, in order for them to be registering for VAT purposes. So they have imposed 12.5% on all taxable imports that comes into the country, exceeding 200,000 Ghana cedis and more.
So when will the implementation itself start, and how are you going to roll out the implementation?
All right, so the implementation is starting on the 6th of June 2023, that's this year. So it's starting at the main port of entry, all point of entries in the country. So it's going to be applied, as I said, on importers whose threshold exceeds 200,000 Ghana cedis and more.
You mean 200,000 cedis or more?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So what's expected from businesses, from those who would be, who all of this, levies will be imposed on?
Okay. So it's expected that before the implementation of this policy, all businesses who are yet to register for VAT purposes, we encourage them that they should go ahead, go to any Ghana Revenue Authority taxpayer service centers, or even go to a portal, that is the taxpayer portal, so that they will be able to register before the implementation comes. We don't want to disturb any business activities. So in order to avoid this upfront payment, we urge all businesses to go and do the needful. Go and register for VAT purposes.
Okay, so when you're on the portal, you don't have any challenge at the ports. Is that the case?
No. Usually the portal is user-friendly.
Okay.
It's been made in such a way that everybody will be able to use it. But when you have challenges, you can always consult our various offices for help.
How about businesses that are seeking further information on this? Are you opening up to them, or are you also reaching out to them so you are able to clear all of these differences before time?
Yes, we have made our doors available for businesses who would want further clarification and information regarding this policy. So we have in our offices, we have the taxpayer service centers, where if you have any challenge with regards to this policy, you can just enter, go there, seek for any clarification before this implementation is done.
What's your expectation from businesses and business owners?
We expect that all businesses will comply with this policy. You see, the main reason for this upfront payment is for parity. There are people who are registered and they sell their goods with VAT element on it. There are others that are not registered without VAT element on it. So it will not be fair for a person who had registered for VAT purposes to be paying VAT and at the same time not being able to, you understand what I'm saying? So it's not be fair. So because of parity and for equality, then register your businesses. If you don't do that at the point of importation, we are going to impose the 12.5% on it.
So that's the sanction?
Yes,
that's the only sanction?
No, that's not the only sanction. We expect that after going through all this process, you come to us, we do registration, and let me also say that the 12.5% that you pay at the point of entry, you'll be able to retrieve it if you satisfy the condition that the Commissioner General will be required to do so. First, you need to pay the upfront payment, you need to register for VAT, you need to file all your returns, and other commitments that will be required by the Commissioner General. When that is done, and the Commissioner General is satisfied with all these requirements, you'll be able to retrieve your money. The money can be given you upfront.
Okay.
All will be given to you. Part would also be given to you depending on the condition. When the part is given to you, if you have any other liabilities, you can use those the other party to settle those liabilities, or it can even be rejected.
Do you have enough men at the ports to enforce this?
Oh, yes. We do have enough people there to enforce this policy.
Is there any other thing you'd want the business community to know as to why you're embarking on this drive and what more purpose it will serve in terms of benefit to the country and to the general populace?
Okay, so like as I said initially, we want to bring in more people to come into the tax bracket. Okay. You see, when you register and I register, we get more revenue, and it's able to do a lot of things for the country. So we urge all traders, all importers who are yet to register with the Ghana Revenue Authority to come up front. They should talk to us. We have made, we are fair. We will give them fair assessment so that they will be able to pay, so that all the penalties related to, or the sanctions related to failure to register with the VAT will not be imposed on them.
You are in this age of digitalization where you are making things easier using internet and applications. Do you have similar things for this one as well?
Yes. So, for instance, if you want to do a registration,
right,
you go to our portal. The link for the portal is taxpayersportal.com.
Okay.
When you go there and you want to do a registration, all you need to do is that you scan all your registration documents. You should have a tin.
Okay.
Then scan all your registration documents and you fill the VAT registration form as well. Then you upload it into the system. It will be looked into. Then if there are any further explanation that is supposed to be given to you, we'll go ahead and do that.
Oh, okay. So is that easy when you're using the internet?
It's very easy and user-friendly.
Indeed. We're wrapping up. Any final words to our viewers and to those who need to know more about this?
Well, my final words to all importers, especially, those are our target group, is that they should try as much as possible to register for VAT purposes before the implementation of the policy.
And you say it's happening when again? Remind
on
them
the
of the date.
6th of June.
Yeah. So you need to get prepared for that and be a part of the exercise. Mr. Otto, thank you so much for joining us here on The Pulse. And some residents of Techiman municipality of the Bono East region have condemned the recent hike in utility tariffs as announced by the PURC. The residents contend that the 18% increment will compound the already worsening economic hardship in the country, and of course they are appealing to government to rescind the decision. My colleague Anna Sabit has more.
The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission has announced an increase of 18.36% in average end-user electricity consumer tariff for the second quarter of this year, and this, according to some residents of the Techiman municipality of the Bono East region, will compound the already worsening economic hardships in the country. These residents who have been expressing disappointments in the PURC says Ghanaians are already struggling with the hikes in the prices of goods and services, and this will worsen their plight.
As for the bills, especially the light bill, it's very too much. See, like young boy like me, I've been paying light bill like 130 cedis a month. My monthly salary is almost 330. So how can I make life? The bills is too much. Like they have to reduce us for us. Next time maybe we won't get life. Please, the thing is there is too much. It's too much for the youth.
To me, the because she said the Echon Dadano, Yentimi, I know a thing, Yami enemy, the Echon, I know a thing, Papa, because they me 200 winnings a month, which we are almost 100 and something, which is me income crana a bar, in Bemenede. Now, Sandy Bibe Kahwa, which means 100 winnings now, a third month, but Tabro, which makes you have almost 200 Ghana.
These residents say they were already faced with declining profit margins on their products and services, and the implementation of the new tariff will make life difficult for them.
18% yes, you may take care of me about a basis of crop. It's a wine who be young coy. Bokukra wine pay. Bodusia was his union beside my beam. As 18% of my material. Say about one and no shapa. You want something, you want in your crowd.
The work we are doing, we things is not easy, and if the work I'm doing to pay electricity, light bill, water bill, and school fees and all that, I can't survive. So they have to do something about it.
Salifu, also known as Officer, is afraid the new tariff, if not checked, would lead to a rise in illegal connections by consumers.
And now the world is changing very fast, and anyone seeking to remain relevant must reform to catch up with the changing trends. That's exactly what the Information Services Department is doing in a period when digital space is taking over communication. So what form exactly is this transformation going to take? In studio with us, I have a gentleman and a lady. Dr. Winfred Nafisa Mahama is the head of Access to Information Division, ISD, and also David Owusu Amwa is the acting director, Information Services Department. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Ladies first. Let's give them the priority.
That's right.
So, Doc, we've seen the ISD from over the period when technology wasn't as much developed as we have it now. What kind of transformation is taking place at the ISD now?
Okay, so as you rightly said, the world is changing, and so he who does not change with the changing trend is left behind. When it comes to information and communication, it's even moving faster than anybody. So it's important for ISD to really position itself to be able to move with the trends and even move ahead of the trends, because our position in governance is very key. Information well managed is a powerful tool for everybody, and every citizen who is well prepared with the right information is well informed, can take informed decisions that will impact his life of living. So standard of living is impacted on the kind of information that is gotten from the right sources at the right time to be able to make that decision. And so Information Services Department being positioned as one of the government's key management tools to do the information sharing management, engagement, and all that, has to also position itself within this changing trends to be able to perform its mandate.
How do you intend to do that?
It comes in a variety of ways. It's a whole transformation tool that has to do with manpower development, that has to do with logistics and movement and all that. So we've been doing it over the period, but the first major step that has happened, which was launched by the Minister of Information last week, was the organizational structure. You agree with me that you can do any form of changes in any organization. Once the manpower development is not there to get the right orientation and get the right positioning to take advantage of the tools that are available, you've shot yourself in there.
And David, this is where I want to bring you in. The fact that your work has become very complex now, you agree, because there's now the internet, social media. How challenging is it trying to, render your constitutional duty?
I agree. Just like Doc said, hitherto we were noted for the usage of the information vans to go around to do public
and make announcements in the
Yeah, that's the point. But you realize that in recent times there is technology. So if we don't transform, then we are likely to be lost out. That is how come that we are talking about transformation. And just as Doc mentioned, there has been a launch of our new structure, a new structure that focuses on research. Because any communication dissemination that is not based on research will not stand the test of time. That is how come that we have a division called the Research Department. Before we even set out to do any public education, then we do a background check to know the needs of the people. Then we decide what kind of communication vehicle, strategy, or tools to use. So if you think that it is still the communication vans that we need to use, then perhaps to the hinterlands. But if you think that it is social media, then we have to use it as such. So we have several components in the structure. For instance, we are talking about a new division called Media Division, to be able to serve the interests of the public very well. So when we realize that if it requires community education, like I mentioned, then we need to use the vans. But whatever it is, there's a need for a research, like I mentioned, to be tailored around whatever move and communication move that we make. And that is the challenge that we foresaw. 84 years down the line, we can't operate the same way and still be relevant for government. So that is the background behind all the transformation program that we are talking about.
And if there's any other thing throwing a spotlight on your activities, it should be the age in which we find ourselves. The issue is about misinformation or disinformation. It's also coming up strongly. You are concerned about that?
That is true. So the media division currently has a component of a website. The website was launched about 3 or so weeks ago, and it was tailored at fighting misinformation and disinformation. Fortunately, we have PROs, right to information officers, spread all over, working in ministries, department, and agencies. So the onus is on them to provide us with adequate information. So when people are well informed and there's adequate information on the website, then people have the right information. Where people deliberately want to misinform, that's a different thing. But then where people want to work with speed, being tagged as people to break the news fast enough, then they have to be served with the right information. And that is what we are strategically positioned with the media division and the website that I just said was launched. So at least when you go there, like sitting behind the console, you can easily have that access to information. That's right, that's right.
Doc, is there any expectation from the general public? Because it's a two-way affair. You're expecting something from them while you also deliver on your duties.
Okay, it's not like we are deviating so much from our traditional role of being government's information communication wing. Okay, it's just that we are putting more efforts and repositioning ourselves to be able to deliver properly. Now with new media and all that, somebody might say that, why do we need to reposition ourselves, especially if you are in the cosmopolitan area, in the city area, and you are used to social media and all that, you think that that is the order of the day. But as you move out of the city center, you realize that connectivity and interaction is minimizing, you understand? And so that's why we, at ISD, we do what we call a blended way of communicating to the populace. Okay, so we have the traditional media and the new media coming together to function. And so that's the direction we are trying to move to get everybody informed wherever you are. And so as my colleague David said, the Ghana Today website has different sections that you can go to get information. Information from our districts are up there.
You would always get that information.
Always get that information.
We need to go. Any final words, briefly? Because we don't have
what I will say is that the times of old, when people tagged the Information Service Department with just the information van, emphasis on just the information van, just to say that it's still relevant, is far gone. Now we do what we call value-added communication. So everybody can count on us, especially the presence of our PROs, right information officers, spread all over. So reason up with us, let us help serve the best interests of the nation in as far as the communication needs of the nation is concerned.
And I'm grateful. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so thanks to Dr. Mahama and David for joining us here in studio. That's all we have for you here on the Pulsar and Blessed. And news just coming in is that JUSAG has called off their strike. We'll be following up on that for you and, of course, bring you some updates. We'll see you again next time. And log on to myjoyonline.com. You'll get updates on our stories there. Bye-bye.